Hi, and welcome to another episode of Hot Takes with me, the Silver Fox. And the question has to be asked: what is a woman? In Scotland, being a woman just simply means you have a piece of paper. You can be biologically male, you can have a penis, you can have testicles, you can have a very full and bushy beard, you can be called Bill. It doesn't matter. If you have a piece of paper saying you're a woman, and that now entitles you to enter a woman's refuge, a woman's crisis centre, or to hang around in women's changing rooms where young girls will be undressing. All because the Scottish judiciary has no balls, unlike these women with balls. They have declared that a woman is no longer defined as a biological thing. It is no longer purely a matter of biology or of science. This goes against common sense, it goes against scientific understanding, it goes against everything. But in order to push an agenda that damages women, that endangers women, that is a direct and utter threat to the very existence of women, this has been pushed through the Scottish courts. They're the only courts in the world to recognise this. And it is quite clearly wrong. And the people of Scotland, half of them no longer exist as biological entities. They are merely an F on a piece of paper. The very fact that you're born a woman, the very fact that you are capable of giving birth is immaterial. Let's look at this article and weep for the future. And weep for the future not just of Scotland, of course, because this is bound to spread like the cancer it is. And it is an appalling abuse of power. Sturgeon is singularly responsible for this. She has just wiped out every Scottish woman and placed every Scottish woman and every Scottish child in harm's way. Here's the article. When I first heard the result of this case, I was agog. I could not believe an intelligent woman, a judge who's a woman, has come to this conclusion. The Scottish legal system can be summed up very simply. It's a fucking joke. Challenge to Scottish Government's definition of a woman is thrown out by a judge who says sex is not limited to biological or birth sex. That is exactly what sex is. Sex is defined scientifically by chromosomes. XX or XY, and that's it. She is confusing the word gender with the word sex, which is something that very, very stupid people do. So this judge is obviously so fucking stupid that she should no longer be a judge. She's just shown how uneducated and ignorant she is. Remove the right for her to make this decision and throw this case up to the Supreme Court. 4 Women Scotland opposed non-biological women as fitting a legal definition. Judge Lady Haldane concluded that sex is not limited to biological or birth sex. Why is she calling herself a lady? All of a sudden, she's not a lady anymore. She's not female anymore. She is that group that aren't defined as male. Because there's no such thing as female in Scotland anymore. So a judge has thrown out a legal challenge by feminist campaigners against the Scottish Government's definition of a woman in law. And the challenge from campaign group 4 Women Scotland opposed guidance produced by Scottish ministers around gender representation on public boards. Sex and gender, separate things. People who think otherwise, morons. The campaign group won an appeal earlier this year, after which Scottish ministers produced revised statutory guidance to the Gender Representation on Public Boards Scotland Act 2018. However, the campaign group returned to court contending that the revised guidance was unlawful. They argue the definition of a woman in the Equality Act 2010 is taken to be as a reference to biological women, and that any attempt to conflate that concept with an acquired gender is impermissible. Issuing her decision on Tuesday, the judge, Lady Haldane, said, at its heart, this petition is concerned of whether or not, as a matter of law, the definition of woman in the 2010 Act includes those persons holding a GRC, a gender recognition certificate, stating that their acquired gender, and thus their sex, is female. Gender and sex, not the same. Sex, male or female, gender, masculine or feminine. You can have a masculine female, you can have a feminine man. It does not change their chromosomes. And sitting and wanting and desiring, oh, I so wish I was a lady, does not change the fact that you've got a prostate, an Adam's apple, and XY chromosomes. Wanting, don't make it so. So there's a point. If you're a lady in law now, if you're a woman in law and you go to hospital and they put you in a woman's ward, I hope that they never, while you're in that ward, test you for prostate cancer, because obviously you're a lady now, and ladies don't get prostate cancer. That's one way of curing the problem, isn't it? She concluded that sex is not limited to biological or birth sex, and that the revised guidance issued by the Scottish Government is lawful. In a decision, Lady Haldane wrote, I conclude that in this context, which is the meaning of sex for the purposes of the 2010 Act, sex is not limited to biological or birth sex, but includes those in possession of a GRC obtained in accordance with the 2004 Act, stating their acquired gender and thus their sex. And in that line, she's now allowed men who could be the potential perpetrator of an R, to suddenly say, oh, I'm a lady now, and sit in a R crisis centre with their victim. And if their victim complains, their victim could go to jail for a hate crime, because Scottish law is a fucking joke. She added, such a conclusion does not offend against or give rise to any conflict with legislation where it's clear that sex means biological sex. I think it does. I think if you're a woman in a woman-only space and a man walks in, you are completely offended. The ruling comes days before next week's final vote on the Scottish Government's plans to reform the Gender Recognition Act. Let me rephrase that. The Scottish Government's plans to totally eradicate women in Scotland. The Gender Recognition Reform Scotland Bill, currently working its way through Holyrood, proposes to remove the requirement of a medical diagnosis of gender dysphoria as a condition of acquiring a gender recognition certificate. So any man can now be a woman and be treated as a woman in Scotland simply because it's easier. He can have access to vulnerable women. He can have access to where young girls are changing. He can have access to women's prisons. He can do whatever he likes simply by saying, I'm a woman now. Well done, Scotland. Well done, you. You voted in this crowd of extremists, the SNP, who have now obliterated all safeguarding for women and children. You have just voted in the biggest, I'm going to say, potential human rights travesty in the history, or certainly the modern history of mankind. You may as well just hand women over to men and say, it's fine, just do what you want with them. There's no repercussions. Because also in Scottish law, a woman cannot R another woman. There is no charge. So a man can penetrate a woman, but claim to be a woman, and therefore they cannot be R'd. It cannot legally have happened in Scotland. Well done. You are a bunch of fascist, dangerous, anti-humanitarian wankers. That is the SNP all the way through. I cannot get over how dangerous this bill is. And I cannot get over that a judge has allowed this to stand. Well, I wouldn't wish this on anyone ever, but I hope that something happens to that judge, that she realises then that she's made a mistake, when the perpetrator of any act against that judge will then walk free because of that line, that one line that judge has said. And that's the only way these people are going to learn. I will go with Heinlein, Robert Heinlein, in which he said that in the entire history of the world, nothing gets problems solved like violence. It is disappointing, to say the least. You're going to have men in single-sex spaces. It's disgusting and it's wrong. And the Scottish Government said they're pleased with the outcome. Yeah, they're pleased. The Scottish Government, the SNP, has said they are pleased at the destruction of women's rights in Scotland. You think back to your grandmothers, your great-grandmothers, those who fought for emancipation, those who fought for the vote. You know, those who fought for equality in the 60s. They pushed and pushed and pushed for women's rights. And with one single act, and then with one line from a judge, women in Scotland have lost everything. Well done. Scotland, you must do something at the next elections. You must vote out these weasels. I'll finish and come up. So, all you can say now is Scotland is full of winos. Women in name only. To think that if you're a Scottish woman now, you have got no rights, you've got no protections. You could be attacked and the attacker is deemed to be a woman. He could be twice your weight, twice your size, but that's absolutely fine. He cannot be stopped from competing on a field of sport against you. He cannot be stopped from entering a changing room where you could be undressing your 7-year-old daughter. He could not be stopped from going into a woman's ward. And we know what happens when men are locked in women's wards. Firstly, women are ARD. We know this. This has happened. Second, we know the NHS will cover it up. We know this because this is what's happened. And they have actually told police that that did not take place. That attack could not have taken place because there are no men in that ward. A woman got pregnant from an R in a hospital ward, but apparently there was no men there. And the NHS covered this up, lied to the police. And I've mentioned this before. And everyone involved in that needs to be fired and, disbarred. It's not disbarred with that, is it? But off the register, deregistered, never to work in medicine again. And here's the thing. If a man is in a woman's hospital, a hospital ward, and another patient says, is that a trans woman? Is that is that other patient biologically male? And they don't answer, that's lying by omission. Or if they answer and lie, that's a lie. Because unless they tell the truth, they are lying to a patient. And that is against the Hippocratic Oath. And I've mentioned this before. And any hospital worker who breaks the Hippocratic Oath needs to lose their job immediately and never work in medicine again. That has to be a safeguard. You cannot have biological men in places where there are women. They can call themselves what they want. They want to walk down the street in a pair of slingbacks and a pretty frock from, Jaeger. That's up to them. Nobody gives a shit. We can laugh at them. We can mock them. Of course we can. Jaeger in this weather. But for them to demand access to safe spaces where vulnerable, particularly where vulnerable women are or where children are, that is clearly wrong. But the Scottish judiciary says, no, it's not wrong. They've just handed over the keys to women's safety to mentally ill men. Well done, Scotland. Let's hope you have the option soon in the next election to throw out every single SNP member, because what they're doing is disgusting. I could go on all day about this, but I'm not going to, so I will stop now. If you like what you're seeing here on the channel, please hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Ring that bell for notification of future outputs. Leave a like, leave a comment. Please share the video. And until next time, stay safe, stay well. Don't trust the Scottish judiciary. And goodbye.